Hello and welcome back to the Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, the Mix show. We're back with the DP World Tour bets. As you may see again, we're joined by Ryan Baroff for a second week running. Illness running through the Hoke household, which is never good. So best wishes to Sky and the family there. But Ryan, this means that we get to chat for 2 weeks in a row, which is always pleasant. Really close last week with Laurie Cantor. You obviously picked him without Rory, Rahm, Hatton and Fleetwood. Hatton comes out on top, unfortunately, to kind of squash that bet. But from a standpoint of just picking the right guys, right, like you were well aware of the people that were a danger zone there, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm going to hang my banner on. I think Laurie led the field in strokes gained tee to green for what it's worth. So we will hang the banner on that one.
It's tough to know how good Laurie Cantor is. Like it's because he was on track for a PGA Tour card, right? After he won that first event in Germany, and then he kind of not squandered the second half of the season, but didn't just quite do enough. Yeah. Do we think he's good enough for the PGA Tour if he gets there?
I think he has the skill set, right? Like he's done it his whole career with the ball striking, with the off the tee game. Like I think that stuff translates really well. Yeah, have some concerns about his short game, but like he's no worse than like Matthew Pavon. Like he's on that same tier. So I would have said no to Matthew Pavon last year as well.
And I think that's kind of what it almost like. It's tough to say, but like I always said to people, like to fail, right? Like we looked at like Nikolai Højgaard last year, and we're like, look, he's the perfect skill set for the PGA Tour, and he should really succeed over there. And now I'm looking at like Nicholas Norgard Mollo, who's making his debut at the Farmers Insurance this week, just thinking he's probably going to, again, perfect skill set, could really succeed at the PGA Tour. But to your point, like short game, I think Sammy Valimaki talked about it last year, like the different green types and things just really catch people out, the traveling. And I think I've almost had a newfound respect for those kind of 80 to 100 ranked guys on the PGA Tour that actually just keep their card every year, because it is just a real strong depth of field in those events.
Yeah. And I think, again, I mean, it's even harder now. Like they created this pathway for the top 10, but it's hard to get starts, right? It's hard to get starts. You're not in the signature events. Like you have only a few events where if you don't have a top 5, top 10 finish, you're probably heading right back to Europe next year. So,
and I feel like I don't know what the answer is, but they more sort of have to tier the guys that, like, if you finish top 3 of those PGA Tour cards on DP World Tour, you should get into more events. They have to do something right, otherwise, like, you're almost set up to fail. But going back to the event itself last week, obviously Terell Hatton wins pretty well in the end. Obviously Hillier I thought was good for most of the week, but Terell Hatton showed his class on Sunday. As we mentioned, Laurie Cantor, great. And then you've kind of got Rory McIlroy, just shoot 6 under on Sunday, come out of nowhere for the first 2 days. And I guess to the point of like probably what we said last week, like if he had a run before this week, he wins. Like he just needed to blow the rust off.
Yeah, I mean he's inevitable there for sure. Just like you said, he got off to a pretty slow start, but we've been saying for like I'm as bullish on Hatton this year as probably anybody. Been taking him in major drafts. I've got futures on him for 3 of the majors, all in except for the Masters. He's a top 6 player in the world right now, I would say. His game translates. He's consistent, and he has a short game. Like I think that's one of the biggest things that I think will set him apart from these other chasers, is that I would trust him with a 10-footer almost over anybody up there right now.
And I think the thing you said there, like it's now he's got to go into sort of major season and really impress, and that's kind of what sets him apart. But for the first 5-6 years of his kind of peak, or his career, like he was really good in majors. He impressed in the US side of majors, and it was only really the Masters that he struggled in, and that's not for everyone, right? Like not everyone can be Augusta. There's 70 players and 40 of them can't win every year, right? So like the fact that he's got top 10 finishes in all 4 majors now, I look at him in this way of everyone kind of gets him like, oh, he's not good enough in the major, he's not good, and that is 100% true. Like, you can't deny it. He's not good enough in the major. He's not consistent. But I also think it's probably overplayed a little bit. Like, there's no reason in my mind to think that Terell Hatton can't win a major. There's nothing. There's nothing about his makeup. There's nothing about. It's not like he's got to a final, group in a major and just completely folded. It's not. He just hasn't quite done it yet. But he's only really been doing top stuff since like 2016, so 8 years. Well, we think about people like Phil Mickelson. How long did it take that guy to win a major, right? And then he goes on with 5 or 6. Like, there's better players that took longer to win a major.
Absolutely, and I mean, it's not like I'm going to take a shot at Tommy Fleetwood here. It's not like he's Tommy Fleetwood and not winning, right? He's won. I think was this his 5th Rolex win? 5th or 6th?
I think he's got the most Rolex wins, right? Maybe Rolex.
Yeah, like and obviously he's won Bay Hill, right? Like, he's won stuff. He's played on Ryder Cups, and I think the major thing, and I think it was overblown as well, was the mindset, attitude. He's not very patient. He can blow up. He gets angry. He still does that to an extent, but he's certainly elevated his game into just a top 10 player. Like, that's just what he is now.
How much do you think that behavior on the course is fed into as well? Like, I feel like he knows he's a character and just does it, right? Like, I think if you're doing that, there is obviously an element of it, like 3 or 4 years ago, where he couldn't help it. That's just who he was. And after a while, like, people comment on it, you almost feel like, oh, I haven't actually blown up yet this week. I should probably do it. Like, almost, I feel like.
Well, I think winning cures everything. You look back to like 2015, 2016, like you're describing, he hadn't won anything yet, right? And he basically wins every year, right? He's got 8 or 9 wins over the last 8 or 9 years. It's just what he is now. But always been a really good iron player, always been a really good putter. I've been much more impressed with his off the tee game, and really just the consistency. Like, he shows up anywhere in the world and he's 3rd, 4th, 5th winning. Like, that's just who he is now. So, really good player.
I guess it's just the fact that he's only won the once on the PGA Tour, right? Like, for 80% of golf viewers, if you don't win on the PGA Tour, you're pretty much not. That's a terrible percentage. I don't know what the percentage is, right? But like, he isn't going to be this kind of person. His wins aren't going to be recognized all the way across the world. But as I said, like, he has got the most Rolex wins. He's tied with Jon Rahm. So he's got Italian Open, Turkish Airlines Open, Wentworth, Abu Dhabi, Dubai Desert Classic. Like, how much more does he need to do to prove that he is? And that's against Rahm, Rory, Fleetwood, Horschel at times, Lowry, Noren, who are the other guys that have got these big wins. Danny Willett's won a Masters. Justin Rose has won a major. Noren's gone close in some. Lowry's won a major. Like, there's no way that he's a lesser player than Shane Lowry. I know that things have to align for Lowry that week, and I get it, but he is well capable of winning anything.
Yeah, I mean, just generally speaking, over here at least, everyone tends to lump those European players in together, as they migrate over. So Hatton, Fleetwood, Fitz, Lowry, like you said, but they're all different, right? And again, like last year or 2022, it was definitely Fitz who elevated himself, and now it's Terell Hatton. And like, even looking back to Bay Hill when he won in 2020, like, he beat Bryson and Rory and Rahm and Scheffler, more like all those guys were up there. So yeah, he can win anything. I am ready to say that.
Do you as well? Like, it's good that you touched on Fitz there. Like, everything had to align for him. It had to be where it was for him to win that major. Like, I know he'd played well in the major before, and he had elevated his game, but like, everything lined up. I don't think Hatton's got that kind of very obvious. Like, I think about Max Homa this year and Quail Hollow and things like that. There are certain places, that suit certain players, but Hatton hasn't necessarily got that. I think a lot of people look at the Open Championship as somewhere that he should break through. But I always think that's like, you're almost a victim of your own success. Like, actually, he could just suit anywhere. And the Augusta was the biggest question mark, and then he goes and finishes tied 10th there last year, or tied 9th. I still have my doubts as to whether he can win a green jacket, but by all means, he's now done the hard part, which is just get over the mental hurdle.
Yeah, and I think his game is definitely, I think it's set up for majors, because like, I wouldn't pick Terell Hatton in Birdie Fest, right? And so maybe, that would steer me away from PGA Championships and stuff like that. But like, I don't think Quail Hollow is going to be easy at all. I think it suits him really well. I I think the Portrush thing and Open, I think, I don't want to pigeonhole him there, but he is such a good links player. I think like Shane Lowry, I think he's always in contention for the Open Championship. So, I bet him everywhere except for the Masters this year.
Is there any world where you back him for the Masters as well?
I don't think so. Mostly because, how is he going to beat Scotty and Xander and Rory? It's such a good golf course for them that I just feel like it's hard for anybody else to win. Even Rahm, between Scotty, Rory, Xander, and Rahm, I don't want to take them on at the Masters.
No, I get that. And also, the one thing I would say, and this we'll wrap up on Terell Hatton, but he's probably the one outlier who's probably, maybe not one outlier, I think there's a couple, but he's the one where I feel comfortable enough to say his level not only hasn't dropped since he's gone to live, he's almost improved.
Yeah, I think so. I think he got comfortable. And again, like you said, he has a bad rap in majors because he hasn't necessarily contended, but he's got 6 or 7 top 10s. I feel like that's enough of a track record over a period of time. He's been there and he can be there. And he is way better now than he's ever been. So.
When it comes to obviously you've mentioned you like the Open Championship for him and things like that, but we just talk about numbers, right? So he's 40-1 PGA Championship, 50-1 for the US Open, and 30-1 for the Open. I don't see this 20-point disparity between his chances of winning the Open and the US Open.
You're just paying the European tax on that one. We are too. You can get Fleetwood at 40, but you go to the Open and he's 18 or 22 when they open. So I bet the 30. I can probably bet him at 40 in a couple of months, but I wanted to get some down early on Hatton.
Yeah, I like it. And couple of strong weeks for you out of the gate on the PGA Tour, so you're ready to sprinkle a bit on the majors going on.
Plenty of money to lose. Let's do it.
That's the way to do it. So then, with that in mind, let's go over to the Ras Al Khaimah Championship, where we've got, I would say, a decent field. It's definitely a downgrade from what we had last week. You've got Thurman Olsen as a 12-1 favourite, Patrick Reed at 20-1. And just before we even move any further, Ryan, when you have 2 players that are almost not the opposite, because Olsen is a defending champion, but they're nowhere near the prototypical player that we think is right for this golf course. Olsen's this huge bomber. They can both score and they can both do it with their short game, but it almost appeals massively to me that you're going to have a bunch of guys that are going to be slightly overpriced because these 2 are in the front of the market.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, like you said, skill set type, I think it opens itself up to bombers and potentially some long shots here as well. I kind of just have a general rule of thumb, especially in these weaker DP Tour fields, that I'm not betting anybody under 20 or 30-1. It's just we've talked about it, with Thomas Peters when he's 12-1 in fields, with Jordan Smith when he's 18-1 in fields. I don't care how good he's playing. I'd rather go elsewhere with that money. Yeah,
I bet both of these guys last week, Olsen and Reed. I had absolute high hopes for both of them. Olsen was pretty disappointing. Reed did what Reed probably should do, finishing inside the top 10. But I'm way more comfortable backing Olsen in the 30-1, even in a stronger field, than I am trying to take 12-1 favourite, even though, of course, I've done that before. So then we come into this next trio of 22-1 golfers, and we both got one here. Keita Nakajima, 22-1, Ryan Fox, 22-1, Tom McKibben, 22-1. I'll let you lead off, Ryan, with Keita Nakajima.
Yeah, we talked about him quite a bit last week as well. Just, probably the one player on tour that I'm highest on this year in terms of making a leap from, he's sort of borderline top 100 player in the world. Obviously was a highly touted amateur, was one of the best players on tour for the first half of last year through his win at the Hero Indian. And just a ball striking guy. He hits fairways, he hits greens, very, very consistent. Played okay last week, but specifically the iron play was really strong. I thought about backing him last week, and now I get him at 28 in a fairly weak field. So just very high on him. And he did finish 4th here last year. It seems like that was skewed by a hot putter, but he finished 4th here, and I like him, and he's in good form, and that's about all I need here.
Yeah, and look, as someone that was following, I bet him in the first round leader market. He was 4 under through 8, and he got to the par 5 9th, and he was on the fringe in 2 on the par 5 hard, and then went bogey. And there's probably just that little bit of him that just needs to sharpen those things up, where he's still fairly green, and there's like certain amount of times that talent just wins over in that situation. But there are times where he just needs to refine his game, and that will come.
He also had a walk-off albatross on Sunday, so maybe some good mojo going from there.
Perfect. So he made up for that in more ways than one. Yeah. I have gone with the more prototypical player for this golf course in Ryan Fox, in the sense that he was a wire-to-wire winner here when it was the Ras Al Khaimah Classic rather than the Championship. He's been 11th and 16th on this golf course. Otherwise, the 16th came on a Challenge Tour. He was 5th at the halfway mark. But I just wonder if we're kind of forgetting about Ryan Fox a little bit. And I certainly overlooked him last week. He wasn't really on my radar, and he was 4th going into Sunday. And I was like, hang on a minute, like, let's pay attention for next week. And you look at his finish to the PGA Tour season. He was 11th at the Sanderson Farms, but he was actually 7th going into Sunday. 46th for the Black Desert, not great, but he was 6th after round 1. 34th in Vegas, 3rd round 65 at the Shriners, and then Zozo is what it is. And then he has this massive break and it comes straight out of the gates and finishes 10th.
Yep.
This is a guy that everything was leveled at him, and like, he just can't win. He's a supreme talent that can't win. Finally breaks through the World Super 6 in Perth, and everyone goes, right, but that's not really a real event. Let's see what he can do. Wins here on this golf course, and was like, oh, well, it's a pretty weak field. He's only beaten Rush Fisher. And then he wins Dunhill Links and Wentworth. And he has 2 pretty close shaves in big events as well, the Irish Open from Russell Knox, and then the Dutch Open with Victor Perez. Like, he's only really lost out to really good golfers, and he's actually beaten Terell Hatton, Alex Noren, Russ Fisher, Otegi in his 4 wins.
Yep.
Like, I think we're almost overlooking Ryan Fox because he's been away and out of mind for a year on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and he was actually on my short list of like guys I wanted to watch last week because he was 100-1, and like you said, we haven't really heard much from him. Hasn't played well for probably a few months now. And I thought about getting on him last week, and he finished 10th, right? A strong iron play all week, and then like you said, won on this golf course. It was a weak field, but he had a 63 and a 65 that week, and these sort of open, exposed, windy, bomber style courses are really perfect for him.
Yeah, and I just think he's a slightly better player. Like, I think if we think back to a year ago, everyone's talking about Ryan Fox as like this dark horse in majors, and he could have an impact on the PGA Tour. He's finally found his game, and all of a sudden it's like, well, he's had a pretty disappointing PGA Tour season. That just happens with these guys. We've already seen it in. Yeah, Matthew Pavon's probably an outlier in terms of the people that have made the transition from the DPR Tour to the PGA Tour, right? And I'm fine with these. I've got another one on the list later on that are just, we've overlooked them for a year now because they haven't performed on the PGA Tour, and not everyone's made for it. I wouldn't have tagged Robert McIntyre, as I mentioned last week. I'm actually more into what he's done because of the belief that I didn't think he was going to get there. It's almost more impressive. And I think with Fox, like, if he had won, I wouldn't necessarily have thought Ryan Fox was built for the PGA Tour, despite the fact that he hits it a long way. So, I'm really bullish on Ryan Fox, at least for the first few weeks here. And then we'll see where he kind of lands after he's back here more regularly.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about your second pick, Ryan.
Yeah, again, not much to say. I certainly have a type when it comes to, Korn Ferry graduates, Challenge Tour graduates, Q School graduates. And I think everybody who follows this tour is very high on Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson. Last week was obviously very encouraging because he did it. He finished top 10 in a very strong field, and he did it with elite ball striking. He was, I think, 19th off the tee and top 10 in approach. Really was just sort of there all week. He got off to a bit of a slow start, had a really good weekend, really good Sunday specifically. And I think, again, he's coming to a course where his off the tee and ball striking is going to reign supreme. I really like guys who have shown the ability to win on the Challenge Tour, and he did it 3 times last year en route to being the points leader of that graduating class. So just very high on him. There are some 30s and 33s and 35s out there this week. So I just thought that was very fair because he's going to win soon.
3 wins, 2 seconds last year on the Challenge Tour. He's already finished 4th at the Dunhill Links. He's finished 7th for the BMW International Open, which was in 2023, right? He's already honed his skills on both tours.
And just played in the Team Cup. So he's he's on the radar for these guys for sure.
I wonder what he has to do to get on DP World Tour, to get on the Ryder Cup team. Sorry, like I wonder what. I guess he has to win a couple of times and almost force his way on a points perspective. Like I don't think they're going to want to pick him straight away because he didn't have the best team cup experience, right? But whereas someone like a Nikolai Højgaard, it's like, well, okay, if he flashed 3 weeks before we can kind of pick him, I think Nikolai Peterson has to almost force his way on at this stage of his career.
Yeah, because I think the back end of that team, while still solid, I mean, like, I don't think Fleetwood and Fitz and Lowry are going anywhere, right? So it's like there's the McIntyre spot, but I think he's going to be there again. And then there's like the Nikolai spot, which it could be Nikolai again. It could be Rasmus. It could be this Rasmus. So I feel like there's only probably one spot up for grabs on that European team right now.
And then we got to talk about Sepp, I guess.
Bach, in like he's a top 20 player in the world. Like he's on that team. There's no doubt about that.
I know this is a DP World Tour conversation. I don't want to sort of derail it too much. Is he still underrated?
Yeah, kind of in that same mold that like a Russell Henley is, except Sepp wins slightly bigger events. But like they've both popped in majors, both elite ball strikers, both underappreciated, unheralded. But Sepp has the innate ability to get a hot putter. On top of he's one of the best iron players out there, and he hits every fairway. Like that combination is going to keep you in a lot of golf tournaments.
I also just think like okay, he didn't have a lightning first season. He was good. I think he finished like 100th in the FedEx Cup, whatever. But when he's won, like he shot a 62 on the final day to win the John Deere. He wins the Honda, just being really impressive. Shoots a 66 on Sunday to hold off Shane Lowry. That the way and the manner in which he wins so far, and I know that's kind of to your point, like the fact that he can hold off these people, and actually he should have had like an extra win or two on his guys' playoffs as well. I do think this is kind of, I mean, he's 20th in the world or 19th in OWGR. He's 26th on Data Golf, and I normally feel like Data Golf are a little bit more generous and more in line with kind of how we think. Yeah, and I was quite surprised to see him 7 spots lower on their ranking compared to the world ranking.
Yeah, I guess I would say probably needs to do it more consistently in stronger fields, right? Elevated events. Like he's had a couple good major finishes, but like doesn't contend at like Riv and Memorial and Bay Hill. So until we see that, I think he's going to be one tier below like a Tony Finau and a Russell Henley and a Tommy Fleetwood.
I find like Taylor Pendrith in that ranking. Like if I just took,
I think Seth is better than Taylor Pendrith. I'll say that. Yeah.
Like I'm picking on the guy that he's only 2 spots behind. He's behind Rasmus Højgaard. I think he's a better player than. Is he not a better player than Max Grazeman right now?
I'm done trashing Max Grazeman because he just sort of puts me to shame every single week.
He's good. But this, we sort of say, oh, he's got to do it in majors. 2nd at the Open behind Brian Harman, 7th at the PGA that same year, 16th in the Masters last year, 20th year. So he's done it now, and I actually think it's because his ascension's been so quick that we've almost ignored it. And I know there's the Henley types that are just ultra consistent. I know there's the clutch Keegan Bradley that will just win at any given moment. But something to be said for the guy that's in contention at least twice a year.
Yeah, so it's funny. I did a majors draft with Andy Lack and his team prior to this year. And I took Straka in round 6. The 3 picks who went right before him were Taylor Pendrith, Rasmus Højgaard, and Max Grazeman. So that's definitely the bucket that he's in. But I felt like I got the best player there in the 6th round.
I look, as someone that follows DP World Tour, I love Rasmus Højgaard. I believe in him an awful lot. I don't think there's much between him and Nikolai, etc. Yeah. Grazeman's an excellent son. I still believe the Grazeman thing could be a little bit of a purple patch. Like, Sepp Straka has been a 4-year sample size now, or 3-year sample size. It would surprise me if he kind of went away. Circling back to Ras Al Khaimah, I've gone with last week's runner-up in Daniel Hillier. We've already mentioned him. He's 35-1. And the first thing I wanted to do was just look back at how he performed the week before he won the British Masters for his first tour win, and he finished third at the BMW.
He did well, yeah.
And he wasn't in the same, like this week. He was obviously leading going into Sunday, and that time he was kind of 4 shots back. But I've got to feel like he'll take almost the same amount of confidence from losing by 1 shot to Terell Hatton. Like Hatton had to come and beat him. He was 1 shot ahead on Sunday. It wasn't like he blew a 5-shot lead or anything like that. He was 1 shot clear. He finished 1 shot behind the 6th best player in the world.
Yes, and I'm with you. I was close on him this week, and again, he sort of fits that mold. I think he won twice on the Challenge Tour, maybe once in like 21 and once in 22. So like, I definitely target guys who have won. It's a little frustrating to have to back him at that number, because last week he was like 300 to 1. But it is what it is. Yeah.
And I think that is what will ultimately put people off. But this is a guy that, as you said, has won on the Challenge Tour. He's won on the DP World Tour. So he's won, as you said, twice on the Challenge Tour, 1 on the DP World Tour. He's made a step up. He's been top 20 in the Open last year. He's played well in sort of windy and linksy conditions. 3rd at the BMW International Open the week before he won, where he's driving really well as well. He's done well in big events like 18th at Wentworth, 25th at the Dunhill Links. He's a player that I think massively benefits from the lack of depth when people go and take PGA Tour cards for the 10 spots that didn't have them. And don't get me wrong, I think if everyone's here, he's the 20th or 30th best player on the tour rather than where he is right now. But I just thought, even though the odds have come crashing in, I mean, he was kind of like 40, 45 to 1 yesterday, like I still believe there's a decent amount of value when we look at, the people around him. I mean, Guido's very hot and cold. I do like him. Sean Norris, we don't know whether this is the perfect golf course for him, playing extremely well. But he's in that kind of range where I think, well, he's performed brilliantly last week and he's a good driver of a golf ball. Matthew Jordan's never won.
Yep.
I love Matthew Jordan, but he shouldn't be bigger than Matthew Jordan.
No, I agree. I think this range was very interesting. There were 3 names that I was looking at in this range. One was Hillier, one was Brandon Stone, and then one was my next pick, David Puig, who I just like the upside a little bit more. I just feel like sort of with the ceiling, but also the floor, David Puig is just a slightly better player. We saw him win on the Asian Tour this year. Someone qualified for the U.S. Actually, sorry, won twice on the Asian Tour in the last year. He qualified for the U.S. Open. Obviously, very, very decorated college player out of Arizona State. And I got him at 40, so like the extra 5 points and I think a little bit more upside. I went Puig over Hillier Stone, but really all of them I feel like will play well this week.
Yeah, look, he's going to be on live for another season. Puig is Masevu, Garcia, and Answer on that team. Like, I think he's going to fit that pretty nicely. I think he's one of the ones where they picked up those younger guys right, and it didn't necessarily work out with. Certainly with Chikara, who's left. Surratt hasn't necessarily done what people would expect him to do. There's been a couple of disappointments from the way they targeted those players, but he has proved himself at different levels now. And as he's played pretty limited starts on the DP World Tour, he's only impressed.
Yeah, and I think we got a nice look at him in the fall when he finished 3rd at the Spanish Open and then 4th at the Dunhill Links. So it's like he's done it, on this stage, he's done it on live, he's done it as an amateur, he's done it on the Asian Tour. I'm really high on him overall.
Absolutely. There's a couple of players here that I looked at, you probably looked at. So the first couple were Julian Guerrier, who drives the ball, brilliantly at times. He's played pretty well recently. Brandon Stone, who I picked last week, who I do think can just pick himself up and have a good round again. I guess Ayora has to be mentioned as just this high talent player that people will pick several times this season. Like, did you get close to any of those 3?
I don't know how deep you want to go or sort of where he fell, but I looked at Freddie Lacroix. That was one just in terms of again, the off the tee game. But one that certainly popped up because of how strong the iron play and ball striking was last week was Hao Tong Lee. He also finished 3rd here in 2022, I think, when Nikolai won by a bunch. He's a guy that you have to catch at the right time. I ultimately passed on him because I thought he was going to be like 125 or 150 to 1 in this field, but I think he opened at 80 or 75 and may even be shorter than that right now. But in terms of upside and sort of off the tee prowess, that's the type of person I would be looking at this week.
And I think also with House on Lee specifically, I think we've almost got back to what he was. Like, I know he's not winning and he's not regularly contending, but I think that's what he was back in his pomp, right? Like, he flashed, he had the talent to win anywhere, but he just pieced it all together for 4 rounds. And I still think we're getting that. There's still an element of consistency sneaking into his game. He's making cut after cut. He's hitting the ball well on occasion. So I do think he can win at any point out on lane. It's just what number you want to take him at. 70 to 1 best price now. Yes, we'd love to take him at 100 to 1, but I don't know how often you're going to get that about him this season.
I agree. Yeah. And again, very, impossible player to predict. But I think one of the good markers for him is the iron play, because he can lead a field off the tee any week. That's just the type of player he is. So
before we get into kind of the bigger odds here, I'm just going to give a shout out to the audio listeners. So if you're watching us on YouTube, great, and thank you for following along. If you're listening to us on the audio format, it's Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, the mix on the Mayo Media Network, and then you'll find our DP World Tour bets on there. We, thank you for subscribing and listening and sending reviews and all the things that you do for us. It is greatly appreciated. Ryan, I'm going to come into a player now who is the complete opposite of what we've been talking about. He is comfortably one of the worst drivers in the world. Certainly was the worst driver probably on the PGA Tour last season.
I know him well.
I just think we need to give Alexander Bjork a little bit of rope. He's 100 to 1 over there in the States, just win only, which I get is, tough to ask of Bjork at some points. But when you just look and isolate his DP World Tour finishes, he was brilliant with his approach play last week. I think he was second in that really loaded field, finished 27th. He was fine at the Nedbank, 48th, not great. But 12th in Crans-sur-Sierre, 12th in the Scandinavian Mixed. Go back to Nedbank of the year before, 10th, 36th DP World Tour Championship. And then you just got these slew of disappointing performances on the PGA Tour, which has to be expected. I guess the thing that concerns people is he wasn't ever really good with his irons. The one time that he was great at the American Express, and he couldn't really make use of it at Torrey Pines, etc. But he lost strokes off the tee in almost every single event. Well, it was every single event last year, dating back to the Andalusia Masters 2023. Marginally gained last week, hit the ball brilliantly on approach. Short game was disappointing, but we go back to Bjork. The last time he played here, he finishes second. Brilliant performance, 67, 69, 68, 68. He's got that obvious handicap where these players can drive the par fours. He's going to have to kind of lay up or do something really extraordinary and swing out of his boots, and that could lead to trouble. But even two starts ago, he was 8th at the halfway mark, finishes 33rd. On his debut here on the Challenge Tour, finishes 32nd. He's found a way to get around here and compete. And I just think he's priced in the wrong part of the market. Like, I would see him in this kind of 50, 60 to 1 range where you've got Lane Gask and Soderberg and Alex Fitzpatrick and all those kind of guys that you have to respect, and they're great players. But I just think with Bjork, we're kind of quickly forgetting how good he was in 2023 before he went over to the PGA Tour.
Yeah, I think not entirely surprised that he didn't last on tour. He does not have the skill set that you'd be looking for PGA Tour courses. And I think that's what's baked into this number here, because he didn't have a single good finish last year. No. Like, I think you mentioned the Amex. He was, he was 11, but even when he came over to Europe, like, he didn't really have anything that stood out. So I do think he'll be more comfortable back here. I think it's a flyer considering the approach game was so strong last week. And he had a very Bjork-like score last week, 1 under, 1 under, 1 under, 1 under, all 4 days. So that's just the kind of player he is.
Yeah, and I think, look, when you see that, you think, okay, well, he's finished 27th by being solid as opposed to having 2 really low rounds of, 65 or 63, and then a couple of poor rounds, which is almost the opposite of what you want. I just think that, to your point of he didn't really ever piece it together last year, he knew that even if he finished 11th at the Amex, he had to go and play the PGA Tour for the rest of the month. He wasn't going to the DP World Tour. This time, he's finished well at Dubai as a Classic. Seen that his irons are in really good shape, and he knows for the next however many weeks he wants to play here, he's on the DP World Tour. It just probably adds that comfortability of like, okay, I'm back in familiar surroundings. I know the level of field I need to beat. The best two players on the field, according to the odds, are Ollison and Reed. I can hang with them in terms of skill set. I think he'll just be buoyed by what he saw with his iron play last week.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like I would not be shocked if he's T8, T6 this week. You know, that's just
that might be the upside. Like it might the very best finish might be 6th this week, even though we know he's finished second here in the past. It might be that, and look, it might be a DraftKings play. More, people that are playing that, it might be one of those that you can just get you a solid result. But I just thought the number was too big to pass up. We're coming into your longer picks now, Ryan, where you've now started to go with in the without market with Veerman, Reed, Fox, Ollison, and McKibben. Who's your first guy in that group?
ADDC. I think we've been looking for an opportunity to bet him. Obviously, great college career, and he came out on fire on the Korn Ferry Tour, won his first start, then almost won the 4 starts after that. And really struggled last year on the PGA Tour because even though he's a good young player, he's not quite as long and prolific off the tee as like an Aberg or a Clanton or anything like that. So he definitely has to do it more with the iron game and the short game. But what I did notice is the couple of times that he sort of stepped down in class, he was good, right? He finished 6th at the Puerto Rico Open. And then this fall, he was 3rd in Bermuda, 25th at the RSM. He did not qualify at Q School, but he finished 8th. Like he was right there. He was a couple shots away from getting his PGA Tour card. So I think his form is as good as it's going to be. And seeing him between 80 and 100 to 1 this week in a very, very weak field, I will just buy the upside there.
And I think he is one of those ones where you go, okay, we expected X from him. He hasn't delivered that. But is it just really, really hard on the PGA Tour? You've pointed out the obvious drawbacks. He wins straight out the gates on the Korn Ferry, finishes second after that, posts 4 straight top 10s on the Korn Ferry after that. It just very, very good. He knows he's on a fast track to the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
I guess my only concern is like he's just not done it on the DPR Tour in a limited start. Like the Czech Masters, the fans last year, Sadal when he came back home. But I think again it points into what I just said about Bjork. I can't say one about one and not the other. Like if you know you're going back and forth and you've got that kind of sort of anxiety of I've got to go back to the PGA Tour next week and try and do something I'm not very good at. You're probably better off looking, as you said, the 2 sample sizes. Puerto Rico Open 6th, where he actually only finishes 2 shots shy of Bryce Garnett, who wins it. The Bermuda Championship, where he finishes 3rd, and he's only 4 behind Campos, but only second, 1 shot behind the second, and then backs up at the RSM as well. We've only really got good recent memories of him. To your point, again,
and I think, and this is by far like the 3 best events in a row he's put together since that run on the Korn Ferry Tour. Yeah. So again, like I took him, like you said, like 80 to 1 in that market without the top 5. So it just adds a little extra win equity there as well.
Yeah, I like it. The next guy you've got up, I'll go into because I've backed him in the outright market with all the players involved. But I've gone with Freddie Shot, and it was one of those we had a kind of back and forth about the players that we kind of picked yesterday. A short one, me saying basically, I can't believe you've not backed Alexander Bjork, you changed. And you kind of come back and said, obviously, it's a Bombers golf course, which we definitely understand. And the last few events for Freddie Shot, 28th at the Andalusia Masters. He did miss the cut in Korea, but not too concerned about that. 15th in Australia, 16th the following week in Australia, and finishes the year 5th in Mauritius.
Yeah.
We look at what he's done in 2 starts at this golf course, which for someone like Freddie Shot, you probably forget he's played a couple of times in the same golf course, considering he's still relatively new to the tour. He was 69th on debut, never really got going. But last year, 4th after round 1, 7th after round 2, and I think he just a couple of par rounds over the weekend is not going to do it.
Yeah.
But the best run of form we've seen, similar to Demont Deschamps, like it's the best run of form we've seen for I think probably since he turned pro shot. He's getting comfortable. There probably isn't going to be a better opportunity for him all year. Yes, okay, he could get on a run where he's made 3 top 10s in a row and the confidence is high and he just comes good at any one golf course. But in terms of skill set, in terms of golf course, in terms of the position he's in at the start of this year, I don't see a better opportunity to back someone like Shot at 120 to 1.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. This is as good of a form as we've seen from him. We know the skill set, be off the tee, and again, just he goes back to he's won on the Challenge Tour. He was the Q School medalist in 2023, and then cost us a lot of money because we were betting him coming out of that as well, and he never got over the hump. But I think he is the type of player with winning upside, and again, at 125 to 1 or whatever he is, it's yeah, it's a good shout.
You have got two more golfers to go through, both who have probably fond memories in your heart.
Oh yeah.
One very well-known player, and one that maybe if you don't follow the DP Tour, you won't know an awful lot about.
Yeah. So I'll start with the one you do know about, Dylan Frittelli. Not a good golfer, but has the upside. We have seen him win. We saw him win. I think it was last year, right? Did he win last year out of nowhere in Bahrain or sort of wherever they went? After really just being terrible forever. Like he had a top 20 down in South Africa, but really just hadn't played well forever. He can get lightning hot with the putter. Even though he's not a great driver or a great ball striker, like I still think I think class is permanent, right? He has class in this field. He's seen this golf course before. He finished 10th last week very quietly, and was just elite tee to green. I think he was second behind Laurie Cantor, Straka and tee to green, just really strong across the board. I saw him as deep in the full market as 250 to 1. So I bet him at 170 without the top 5. Just again, trying to get myself a little golden parachute there in case one of these studs wins.
Yeah, and you know, the second and tee screen there, but fourth in approach. Like he was awesome with his irons. And look, the short game wasn't there. And actually, when you think about how terrible he's been for a long period of time, even when he was winning, it was the putter that kept him kind of making the odd cut. And that just let him down over the last few events. Whereas he got his ball striking in place. He comes back to a part of the world where he's had success in the past. It is, by all accounts, a flyer. We have I think Dylan Frittelli's just like shoot 65 as he is 80, right? But I don't get that because I know obviously like we're sort of half joking that he's not a good golfer, but he was.
He's won on the PGA Tour. He finished fifth. He finished fifth at the Open. The same year he finished fifth at the Masters. Like this is a guy, and that was only 2021. That was not that long ago. So yes, this guy was good for a period of time.
What do we know what's happened to him, or is it just
so he definitely has had a nagging wrist injury. I don't know if he ever had surgery, but yeah, like I mean, he was a top 50 player in the world for 4 years, like whatever that was from like 2018 to 2021 or 22, whatever it is. But yeah, I think again, just seemed like a big number. I would bet anybody who finished 10th last week at 200 to 1 in a weak field. Like you don't need to sell me on that at all.
And look, I think like when we think about the players who had a bit of a renaissance last year, Matteo Manassero played so well, he's got himself back on the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
You had Lucas Bjerregaard that played well for a good period of time. We were backing him at decent numbers and hoping he was going to get the win again.
Yep.
These guys have suffered longer droughts than Dylan Frittelli. And I do get that he is just miscut after miscut. Like he does churn them out. But to your point again, like fifth in the Masters when it was the COVID year, fifth the following Open Championship, wins the John Deere, wins the Lioness, wins Bahrain last year, won Mauritius and it was a co-sanctioned event. He pretty much spent between 2013 and 2017 just winning, and then he added the PGA Tour to that. I don't know if he's ever going to go back to what those kind of 4 or 5 golden years were. Maybe he doesn't. No. But he is someone that I think he could still end up with 5 DP World Tour wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like he did make both of his cuts down in South Africa this winter as well, sort of leading into the Hero. So yeah, let's just paint that picture that he's found something. And again, he's 200 to 1. Not very likely he's going to win this week.
But he's also like 34 years of age. Like I don't know why I'm pumping up your pick as opposed to my own ones, but like at 34 years of age, he has already won 3 times. He's lost 2 playoff events. He could easily start his career now from scratch and have a good go at it. Like. Yeah. But he's beaten Russell Henley at the John Deere Classic. He's won 3 times on the DP World Tour, at least as recently as last year as well. And the people he beat, like Lombard was in pretty decent form, if I remember that time last year. And Jesper Svensson's obviously gone to get a PGA Tour card. So it's not like he's beaten, absolute mugs either. So Interested to see what Dylan Frittelli does this year. He can get a bit more settled.
Mhm.
Final pick, right?
Ricardo Gouveia. I have bet this man probably for 12 years now. He's gone back and forth between the main tour and the Challenge Tour, but I want to say he's won 6 Challenge Tour events in his career. So again, just kind of been around, won events for a long time. Seems to have turned a bit of a corner recently. He was 24th down at the BMW Australian over the winter and finished tied for 14th last week with some of the best iron play in the field. Opened with a 65, and really just sort of held on the rest of the weekend. But he was probably the one name up there last week that was not very recognizable to casuals. Yep. And then I sort of, I dug into it a little bit more. And in both last year and in 2022, he opened with a 65 on this golf course. So again, I don't need much for me to bet guys at 250 or 200 to 1, but the form last week obviously can play this golf course very well, and he's shown winning upside. So he would be my final shout. And again, I did bet him without the 5 leaders at 170 to 1 this week.
As you say, you've only got to go back to the third, the Korean Open, or the Genesis Championship in Korea, and you've got the 24th in Australia, the 14th last week. Yes, that's a kind of big result in terms of the field, and he was leading after round 1, but to your point, it's pretty sustainable. Bit of an unwanted record to be the second highest Challenge Tour winner of all time, with 7. I don't think you want to be down there for that long to amass that kind of wins. When you look at Benjamin Hebert's got 6. The guy Ian Pyman, who lists it with 8, you've never really heard of him, so never made it too far. But then you've got kind of Eduardo Molinari and Christopher Broberg, and Brooks Koepka famously got 4. I know that he's not that class, but to keep graduating from Challenge Tour 2015, 2021, 2023, get wins at those levels. And again, I always want to mark these players by the people they've beaten. And he beat Dean Burmeister by 4 strokes back in 2015. JB Hansen was a good player when he won that in 2015, the grand final as well. Lucas Nemeth has been a DP World Tour regular for a while now. Ivan Quintero, who's going to be popular, he's beaten in the Middle East in the Abu Dhabi Challenge. And Joel Gerbach, who has famously just plods his way around golf courses. Wilco 9 over Tom Lewis as well. People like that. He's had pretty good scalps for his career. So I'm going to pronounce it completely differently. Call him Ricardo Gouveia, and I don't know who's right. I don't hear it on commentary very often. But yeah, I think it's an interesting one. Probably someone I wouldn't necessarily look at, but makes a ton of sense when you go through that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does.
And his last season, his last sort of big season on the Challenge Tour, I think it was 2021, where he won twice. I think he finished second behind Marcus Helikilda that year. But that was a really strong class. Freddie Lacroix was in that class. I think Yannick Paul and Ewan Ferguson were in that class. Nicholas Norgard-Muller was in that class. So he's done it against a lot of the guys that I think we were looking at this week. So.
Yeah, one guy that played well, just thinking about players that we can mention. You mentioned it, I think it was only probably a round. You mentioned David Ford last week, and I think didn't he have a really good opening round?
He was tied with Gouveia after the first round. First round leader. Then he just sort of hung on, but he didn't make the cut, and played okay.
Yeah, I think that that in itself, I think he shot 10 over on the final day.
It was a struggle down the stretch. 82 on Sunday for him. Yeah.
So again, that will obviously look terrible, and you can't excuse a 10 over the final round, but it's probably quite impressive that he's gone and done that for 3 rounds and straight out the gates. It's one of those things. I think those kind of golf courses where you go chasing, it can be problematic as well. Really interesting that we've just got players here that I haven't looked at purely because they're just not playing very well. 500 to 1, we've got Afib Armrat, Matthias Schwab, Pablo Larrañaga.
Yeah. I looked at Afib Armrat a little bit. There was one guy who popped last week. His name will be very familiar to you. And I was going to look at him assuming he'd be like 250 or 300 to 1, but he was like 100 to 1. Connor Seam, really been dead, has not played well at all, but closed with a 67 yesterday. I think he's the right style for this golf course. He doesn't drive it great, but he can hit it far and he can make a lot of birdies, and he's a good putter. And we've been waiting for him to win, and I feel like it's going to be in a really, really bad field, in a really, really bad event like this. But I couldn't get there at 100. I was hoping he'd be like 300.
Brandon Wu playing the Ras Al Khaimah Championship.
Yeah, again, probably a guy who's better than his odds dictate, but he really struggled the last 12 months. Obviously lost his tour card, so see if he can get it back too.
There's a reason that he's playing here as opposed to Torrey Pines this week. There's a couple of players I just think it's worth potentially touching upon. Riggs Johnston is still impressive. Like he hits it really nicely off the tee. I know he missed the cut last week, but I wouldn't put it past him to bounce back really quickly, considering what he's done so far in his short DP Tour career.
Yes, I don't he was not like a young up and coming, highly touted, but he's done it. Like this is the time of year that I usually take the young guys. Like you look at Wen Yiding, right? You look at Tom Ballant. Preston Summerhays made the cut last week with David Ford. They're not here, but like those sorts of players, like ADDC. Who else graduated? Hamish Brown. I think he's a guy who you could watch this week. So, but yeah, Riggs Johnson was super impressive over the winter. Very curious to see if he can maintain that for even part of a full season, though. Yeah,
we've seen this story before. Like I think Gumberg was won earlier in the season, then just didn't hang on, and it doesn't necessarily play out very well for them. The other one, like Zihao Jin or Jin Zihao, whichever way we want to go around that.
Yeah,
unbelievable in China, and then finishes 33rd in his start at the Mauritius Open, 35th at the Volvo China Open. I know they're sort of not massive results, but kind of show what he can do in this level of field, I think.
Yeah, I bet him somewhere in the fall. It was probably Mauritius, I would imagine, unless he played in like Korea or something. But yeah, probably Mauritius. Just again, if I'm going to target somebody who I don't know very well, I want them to be a prolific winner on their tour. And I think he had won 5 times in a few months. So yeah, seems like a really good player as well.
Yeah, he won 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you're correct. 5 times. And in that time, he also had 2 seconds, a third, and a fourth. So electric. And I get that, we have to always caveat these things with it's the China Tour and there's no getting away from that. But you can only go by what they're doing in front of their regular fields.
Absolutely.
I think that kind of puts a bow on it, unless there's anything else that you kind of wanted to run through in this field.
No, I was just going through the tee times, and it's always funny, with this tour, it's like time is a flat circle and you get the same names and the same groups, but then you also get some ones that just make you laugh. Like the 8-10 starting time this week is Tom McKibben, Guido Migliozzi, and Jimmy Walker. You just talk about three diametrically different people and sort of where they are and where they're going. It's just kind of funny to see.
Yeah, does Jimmy Walker want to talk live with Tom McKibben just to learn more about it? Is he talking to Guido about, I don't know what you talk to Guido about, quite an eccentric guy, I imagine, but yeah, it's a weird pairing.
Yeah, and then my favorite of the week by far, Adrian Otegui, Thomas Peters, and Rasmus Niergaard Peterson. I could just have a camera on that one. That'd be a fun group to watch. Yeah,
I imagine there'll be a couple of club snaps in that one as well.
Well, Adrian's so slow. I hate when my guys play with him, or hate when they play behind him. It's definitely a bit of a penalty. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Right, I'm gonna summarize my picks here. So I've gone with Ryan Fox at 22-1, Daniel Hillier at 35-1, Alexander Bjork is at 100-1 now, and then Freddie Schott is 120. So I'm just going to take those all in the general outright market. Ryan, if you want to break down your picks and where you're betting them.
Yeah, so my 3 in the main market, Keita Nakajima at 28-1, Rasmus Niergaard Peterson at 35-1, and David Puig at 40-1. And then my 4 long shots without the top 5 would be Adrian Dumonte Chassart at 75-1, Freddie Schott at 100-1, Dylan Frittelli and Ricardo Gouveia both at 170-1.
Is there anyone, and it feels like a bit of aftertime, but certainly Straka gave me that feeling last week, but is there anyone that would hurt you if they went on to win this week?
Probably Hautong, just because after I saw his stats last week and the course we were going to, I might still bet him because I have room, but I said, I feel like I should bet him this week. So I think that would be the main one. And then, like you said, a guy like Daniel Hillier, who I'm not betting because the price is just too low, that would just kind of be annoying.
I feel that way a little bit with Veerman. I think
but he's like the favorite. You can't bet him. Yeah,
but he's playing is sustained again for Veerman, which is something he struggled with for a long time. Like even after he immediately won, he kind of struggled a little bit. But like 8th, 14th, 14th, 27th, 16th, win 37th, and the 37th last week was pretty much as bad as he could have finished. He shot 72, 76 over the weekend, so he's 12th going into Sunday. He's played well here a couple of times. It wouldn't hurt. Like I can always look at 22 and 25 to 1 of Johannes Veerman and just go, look, I don't want to be involved in that. So I'm not heartbroken, but it would make perfect sense if he went on to the contender.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say I'm scared at the top of the board here because I don't think anybody has more than like a 5% chance of winning this week. But it is why I took my long shots in that without market because like even if I get an extra 20% of win equity in there by taking those top 5 out, I think it definitely makes a big difference.
And I do think if you look at the winners of this, it has been barring Daniel Gavin's big names. Like you had
absolutely.
Højgaard, Ollison, and Ryan Fox win this golf course. So
yeah,
think as much as I'm not necessarily, as you said, individuals, I'm not worried about Ollison, Reed, McKibben even. Like I do think just trying to take on those 5 guys is probably quite frightening. So
absolutely.
Ryan, thank you very much for joining again. I said to you we'd speak soon on last week's show, and we don't have a following week, so really looking forward to it. Let's hit a winner to kick off the year. Let's give Sky something to come back to next week. And we go again, Bahrain Championship next week, I believe it is. And I think Patrick,
that's going to be a terrible field, isn't it? Yeah.
I think Reed is committed again. Like
that's where Frittelli won. Let's get the vibes going.
So
the Frittelli vibes going.
Is it like Frittelli finishes 40th this week? I think he'll win. It's probably something like that. But
yes.
Looking forward to it. RB, thank you as ever, bud, and good luck this week.
All right, you too, Tom. See ya.